Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here today, and I'm actually excited to talk about something positive because I feel like a lot of the stuff in the world right now is a little negative. So, during this insanely unstable time in our lives, it feels like everything we're talking about is negative. And today, I'm excited to be talking to Isabella Grandic, who has a lot of positive things for our future. She's a part of the Knowledge Society, and she is working to be making this planet a better place, which is fantastic. She's a 16-year-old on a mission to make the world a better place. She's passionate about global sustainability and female healthcare. Her research started in cellular agriculture. You're 16. Uh, the scientific way to make vegan products. On top of cellular agriculture, Isabella is excited about how emerging technologies like AI and 3D printing will help create sustainable food sources. I am blown away by you already. When she was 15, she moved to Amsterdam to help build Europe's first alternative protein show. She's currently an advisor at LF Farms. Did I say
Olive
that?
Farms.
One of the leading cultured meat companies. And today we get to talk to her about her already wildly inspirational career, which is so much more inspirational than mine, and I am 9 years older than you. Hi, thank you for joining us. How's your
Thanks
day?
so much for having me. It's been good.
Good. How are you doing? How are you staying healthy and happy during all of this? Are you good? Where are you?
So I'm in Toronto, and I've actually been having a really good time because I recently started a new project where I'm working on ending maternal mortality, working with the team to identify the main problems in northern Nigeria. So it's been really cool watching tons of documentaries. I'm on like calls all day, every day, trying to figure out how to slap this problem in the face among other problems that I'm excited about. So that's actually have been occupying my time, and I feel super busy and excited and grateful.
You blow me away. Oh, cool. Okay, for those of us who don't know what maternal mortality is, will you kind of go into that a little bit and talk about how you're helping?
Yeah, for sure. So maternal mortality is any deaths that happen within 42 days of a woman being pregnant. So if she gives birth 42 days after that. Right now, there are three generally main causes of maternal mortality. We've got unsafe abortions, hemorrhages, which means severe bleeding after birth, and then hypertension, which is super high blood pressure. In other parts of the world, there's also infections that come with giving birth. So right now, my team is focused on rural Nigeria. So places that are super far out, don't really have access to primary health care, and they're giving birth at home. So they're giving birth at home with what's called traditional birth attendants, so people that don't have any doctoral training. And then what happens, we're focusing on severe bleeding. So women will give birth, they'll give birth with complications, they'll give birth without like the right medication, etc. And then they'll often just bleed to death. And they'll bleed to death because they're not getting to the right facilities. They'll bleed to death because there's not doctors. So we're figuring out a way to incentivize or at least educate them with different technologies to bring them to those primary healthcare facilities where they can get the right medication and doctoral expertise.
Wow, and you're doing this all from Toronto. I am already so impressed with you. I can't. Wow, you're very advanced, especially at 16. How did you get involved in all of this and in the climate change, environmental space, and in maternal mortality? Like, what's your background?
So when I was 15, I joined TKS, which is the program we briefly mentioned at the start, the Knowledge Society. I was honestly just a regular kid. I liked school. I was pretty good at it. Didn't really have much passion. I just kind of like went home, studied, watched some Netflix, eat, sleep, and repeat. I actually watched Riverdale. But anyway, like I just grew up. I wanted to do big things in the world. Like I was super into, at one point in my life before I joined the program, I was just raising money because I wanted to go to Peru and build schools. Didn't go anywhere, but I joined the program. I had no background, no expertise, not even like knowledge in these like crazy technologies that so far I've had some experience working in. I was just a curious kid, had some ambitions. I joined the program out of curiosity. And then when I entered the program, so my dad has always been vegan. So I've been around like a vegan household and family and etc. And I've always been interested in veganism, but like whenever a lot of vegan food, I mean, now it's way better, but like sometimes you're like, that just is not appealing. But then I heard about this crazy technology called cellular agriculture. And basically the concept is we can get real meat products, so real muscle tissue, tastes the same, has the same composition, is the same nutritional value, but without killing the animal. And like that is just a mind-blowing concept. And I honestly think we need more vegans in the world. However, human behavior is so difficult to change. Like I just don't feel confident in us as a civilization for everyone to like get on the same page. And so I think a lot of environmental issues aren't going to be solved by like actual lifestyle changes. They're going to be solved by us figuring out how to get these alternatives. So when I heard about this cultured meat crazy stuff, I was like, I want to get involved in some capacity. So I just started researching. I started writing different articles. I started looking into, how does AI play a role here? How can 3D printing play a role here? Does blockchain? And these are all technologies, literally knew nothing about them before I joined TKS. So that was sort of the first fascination that started. I was really driven by curiosity. I knew I wanted to do big things in the world, so I just tried as many things as possible. I tried to reach out to people. And then eventually I ended up in Amsterdam this summer, got to meet all the scientists behind this technology. Like, people I was just watching on my screen, all of a sudden I met them in person. And it was just a crazy, honestly crazy journey. And now, once I got back from Amsterdam, I went into the second year of TKS, where I was exposed to all sorts of problems in the world. And I grew really passionate about women's health and even like neonatal, which is young children's health. I realized there's so many disparities in the system. For example, 4% of global funding right now goes towards female specific health. So that's literally anything from like periods to dealing with birthing and pregnancy. Like, only 4% goes towards that. So I was like, that's not okay. So I want to work on this. And I have all these tools and technologies that I've learned about. So I wanted to apply them.
Wow, you are incredible. I think we touched a little bit on this earlier, but what is the alternative protein show?
So the alternative protein show was this. So in San Francisco a few years ago, there was an alternative protein show where they got people from all sets of alternative protein. So people in the algae industry, so they're using algae as a new form of protein. People in the cultured meat industry that are using stem cells to grow into these meat products that are real products, but they don't come from cows. There was people that had vegan alternatives to milk and eggs. So basically anyone that is reinventing the food industry came to the show in Europe. There was a bunch of awards and workshops and all sorts of stuff like that. So it was the first gathering of all alternative protein people.
I've been very fascinated by cellular protein recently. I've been doing a lot of research on it as well. And I have this weird internal dilemma where I'm like, is it at its core vegan? This is something I ask all my friends. Like, if it's grown in a lab and you didn't kill an animal, is it technically vegan? What does your dad think? Have you talked to him about that? I'm so curious.
I actually haven't talked to him about that. My views is if it depends. I guess it depends on your intention as a vegan. I'd love to hear your perspective, because I know you have been vegan. My thoughts is, if you're vegan for not killing animals, I do think it is vegan. But if you're vegan because you objectively do not want to consume muscle tissue, it's probably not vegan, because it is muscle tissue. What are your thoughts?
Vegan is such a broad spectrum word, and so many people take it in so many different ways. It can be a matter of consumption. It can be a matter of lifestyle. My view is, I've never had meat, so I don't really need it. So that's fine. I'm probably not going to partake. But I do love that we're finding ways to incorporate real meat into a lifestyle choice that I think will help people in the future kind of eat less animals. And then hopefully it will reduce carbon emissions a lot, and that will help the environment and will kill less animals. I mean, there's so many plus sides to alternative protein. So I'm very excited we're talking about it. I also heard, this is crazy, you gave a keynote at C2. That's insane.
Yeah. So I've given... So I won an award called the C2 7 Under 17. Basically, it's an award for young innovators in different industries, and they invited me to speak in Montreal. And then that was kind of my first really big conference, where I was like literally hundreds and thousands of people. So yeah, I don't know. It was a wild, wild experience. I've never been like, I was on the Huffington Post because of that, like all these things that I never thought, like, honestly, I don't know. Maybe this is similar to your experience. Like, when you did have the courage to want to become an actress, and like all of a sudden you're exposed to this world, you're like, how did I even end up here? Like, I don't know, that was at least my reaction. But it was crazy, because when I did like start doing all these things, and first thing I started doing was blogging. Like, I was like, I want to tell the world about these alternative proteins and about specifically cell-based meat, because I don't think there's enough people that know about this. And a lot of the information out there right now is like very scientific and technical. So I was like, let me make this fun. Let's add analogies. Let's make this cartoonish. So I just started writing really long blog posts to share it to the world. So I think that was like the first thing I could do as a kid from Toronto, like out of my basement. But I had, like, it was really scary at first. Like, I didn't really have the courage to do so. And it was like hard to even get started on the projects. And like my friends, my friends at school were like, what are you doing? So then I just stopped being friends with them. And it was like this whole like turning curve in my life where I was like, I had a lot of courage to do what I did. All of a sudden I'm like at this conference, and I was like, wow, this is wild. So
that's so cool. I mean, you're very eloquent when you speak, so it must not be very scary for you, but speaking in front of large groups of people, believe it or not, is my worst nightmare.
Really?
Oh my God, I hate it. I in front of crew members all day long, but like in front of a group of people, I'm out.
Really? That surprises me.
I'm very impressed by you. I have a note here that says the Sidewalk Lab. Will you explain that to me? It says, what is the plan you created for their smart city? What does all that mean?
Yeah, so within TKS, one of the things that we get exposed to is challenges. So challenges are ways to work with different companies. So as a kid sitting in a classroom, you got to do things where there's always an answer at the back of a textbook. Like I found school really unrewarding because really the number one thing you can get 100% on your subjects and stuff, but there was never more to that. And any question that you asked, like there was always an answer. So challenges at TKS were designed to work with companies to solve problems that they did not have answers to. And so what we do is twice a year, students get exposed to a company, and then we try to deal with one of their problems. And it was my first time dealing with ambiguity. So I started working, doing a consulting challenge for Walmart, and then I did one for a company called Wealthsimple, which is a financial technology company. And recently in December, we did one with Google's company Sidewalk Labs. And so the challenge was, how do we produce affordable, or how do we make a plan to make housing more affordable in Toronto so that it's 40% below market? Right now, Sidewalk Labs in Toronto is working on this whole smart city plan, building the future of housing. How do we do that? And so my team took a stab at it, and we were like, how do we make housing affordable so that it's, again, more environmentally sustainable? So we thought about it from, how do we get people to downsize? Because if you downsize, you know, you're living smaller, and then can we even get the square footage to be, or the price per square footage to decrease? So our plan was around co-living. So how do we get people to share things? Because, you know, you don't spend all of your time in your kitchen, or a lot of people just have these random rooms in their houses that they use once a year. Like I know my basement at my house, like we don't go down there ever. Yeah. So really? Wow. So we were like, there's so much space that we're not using. So our plan was originally, how do we just enable co-living? So we started looking into software solutions to make the transition to co-living easier. And then we ended up making a 70-page PDF on how Sidewalk Labs can implement co-living in their new Toronto city design. So they're building this massive smart city, and that's sort of the project that we got to work on.
Wow, and you were a part of that.
Yeah.
Do you sleep? I'm so confused.
I have really good time. I mean, I sleep 8 hours a night. I am such a health guru. I'm like, yeah, no, definitely not. Definitely not.
Night, I have everything planned out. I'm in the quarantine, but I've got all these things going on. I'm doing all these phone calls. I'm saving the world.
I mean, I'm trying.
Yeah. I think it's really cool that I feel like you talk often in the whole 20 minutes I've known you about science and tech and how that's important to incorporate that into climate change and changing these problems that we have. Why do you think that is?
So if I think about, humans have their ways, and humans are really hard to change. Just like changing your perspectives. Like I know I've talked to it's hard to get someone to see the world the way, like it's hard to get someone, for example, just stop eating meat. Like that's really difficult, especially if they grew up, even though some people don't get it, other people get it, but some people don't. So my thought is, if we take down what is causing climate change, it's basically just human behavior. Like we're not looking at the elephants are not contributing to climate change. No animals except humans are really contributing to climate change at a significant rate. And if we look at what is causing climate emissions and greenhouse gases, we have our food production. We eat a lot of meat. We use a lot of land. Like this is just a lot of greenhouse gases, and specifically meat. Now, I don't think the world is going to become vegan in the next 5 years. I really don't have confidence in the human race to just give up stuff. I mean, meat does taste good. Like, I think chicken's good. I mean, I don't normally consume meat, but I do think chicken can be good. I grew up. Yeah. So
guys, I'm gonna jump in here for a second.
Yeah.
As a actual meat eater.
Yes.
I'm coming out to say I'm a responsible meat eater. I only eat off of, farms that I know of, best practices. Some of them I've even been to before. My son is a big farm advocate as a 4-year-old. As a consumer, a responsible consumer, meaning I only have a certain amount of meat. I don't consume red meat very often. All these sort of things. I think that the tissue is really the factor as far as the consumption of it. My question to you is actually about organic and how that actually relates to the the manufacturing of some of these new kind of alternatives, because I think that obviously everybody has their own things that they are attached to. as we can see during this crisis right now,
Yeah.
people people stop using their cars, and suddenly like, I can't believe the sky is blue. And people actually are at home all the time, and they're really understanding what they're eating in a much truer way than they have in the past, because they're going and buying everything every day, or at least for a while. Now people, I think, are starting to do takeout again, but for a long time. So my question is, how does the organic, sort of responsible organic movement go into this modified food? Because obviously it is essentially a GMO, but it's not a GMO, because this is something that is done with health and sustainability in mind.
For sure. It's an interesting question, because then it makes this question, like, what does it mean to be organic? Like, does that just mean not adding pesticides and all these like ingredients? So what I found fascinating when I first heard about this technology, which I was like, it's going to be a great alternative to veganism. So that's the first thing that got me excited, is tech can just replace our things right now. What actually can happen now that we're taking cells, and we can take one cell from a cow, and theoretically that one cell can feed the entire world. So as long as that cow is organic, and yeah, it's called an induced pluripotent stem cell. It is literally magic. It can proliferate indefinitely. So one cell, entire world. We literally have humanity covered. So if we take that one cell from an organically raised cow, then all of a sudden the identity of that cell is organic. Now, to grow these cells, we have different methods. We put the cells in these, like, it's like imagine you go to a beer factory and they were brewing beers in those like massive containers. Those massive containers is where we put that one cell. And the first thing we do with that cell is we feed it ingredients. And that cell is going to take in ingredients, it's going to start to proliferate, it's going to divide, and it's going to spit those ingredients out. So whatever we feed the cell, as long as that is organic, technically the cell continues to be organic. And what's cool is once we're dealing with like microscopic cellular objects, and we're dealing with things like, we can control science. Like we can so for example, you can't change the temperature of a cow's body like microscopically. You can't be like, I just want you to be 0.1 degree higher. But when we're dealing with cells, we can. So we have this like massive control over the environment that we're growing these cells, and we have complete control over what it's eating. So in that case, maybe I'm wrong in my definition of organic, but if we take an organic cow, took its one cell, and then everything we fed that cell was organically grown and had no pesticides, GMO, etc., technically that meat product doesn't have to be genetically modified, which is really exciting to me.
That is mind-blowing to me. I have one more follow-up, Madelaine. I'm sorry for stepping in.
Take over. It's all you now.
No. It's an engaging conversation. How does that affect dairy? So milk and butter, is there a way to do the same thing? Because look, I don't think that anybody, some people are, they have issues and they want to murder animals. But I think that most people that consume meat as a carnivore, I think it's something more like, my body needs it, and so this is what's happening, kind of, or I was raised this way. Luckily, Madelaine, you weren't. But I was raised this way, and so I'm used to having this stuff in my body, in my system, this taste, right? I don't think any of those people, or most of those people, think of it in a way where like it needs to be linked to an animal. So I think that if what you're talking about is really amazing. And so as far as dairy is concerned, butter and milk and cheese, how does that work?
For sure. So there's actually a process. This one can be controversial on the genetically modified side, but I actually don't think it's the product itself is genetically modified. And here's why. So to make dairy, what we have to do is we take a bacteria or a microflora, so some type of organism that can duplicate. And what we do there is we genetically engineer it to produce the protein. So in terms of milk, we want it to produce whey. So we say, okay, bacteria, here's the whey protein, here are the instructions to encodify it. And what that bacteria will do is it'll produce that protein, and then it'll have its whey. And that whey, so we take the genes, so think about, okay, bacteria, instruction manual. That instruction manual is the same one from the cows. So what that bacteria is going to do is it's going to produce that whey. That whey itself is the exact same from the cows, so the milk protein, except the bacteria was gene edited. So we modified the bacteria to become a cow to produce the protein, but the protein itself is exactly the same. Now, in my opinion, so the bacteria versus the cow takes way more resources. That's why the bacteria is more sustainable. The cow, you're growing this massive animal just to produce a substance with protein. In the bacteria's case, you are editing it to have the ability of a cow, but in the end, you get the protein, and you just have to combine that protein with the same ratio of water and the same ratio of other nutrients. So in the end, you'll have like technically an organic product, and it'll taste exactly the same. You just produce that protein from a bacteria, and it works with butter and eggs and all that stuff.
I think that I struggle with through all of this is
Mhm.
I think a lot of people who eat meat, you're right, Asher, I don't think that they want to link it to an animal. But I do believe that a lot of meat eaters are going to be stubborn in the idea of changing over to an alternative protein that still tastes just like meat and is meat at a cellular level, but isn't actually from an animal. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm
Well,
curious.
yeah, here's what I would say with that is
As
I think that we've seen from Beyond and Impossible already that there's also an economic factor to it. And if you could scale large, some of these lower income communities all over the globe who don't have access to like well sourced meat
right.
would happily take, a Beyond or an Impossible instead at the price point they can afford. I don't think they care. The taste of what the beef that they're getting already, or the chicken, is terrible, like
Right.
truly terrible. They're getting the lowest of the low, the worst raised, the most polluted, like the garbage version of that stuff. The taste for them is not discernible. In fact, it's probably better to have Impossible or Beyond. So I think the future of carbon emissions, a lot of this stuff really lies in the stuff that you're working on, Isabella, because as most people know, the worst emitting in the world is not petroleum. It's actually cattle. Cattle is the worst, and it causes terrible things to happen in the rainforest as well. This is something that we're going to talk about actually next week, but with someone from the Artists for the Amazon. The fires in the Amazon, a lot of them are linked to burning down the rainforest to clear space so that they could raise cattle in the rainforest. So there's nothing more destructive on this planet than cattle raising. And if you could figure out an alternative, I think that after a while you just say, hey, this is what it is. I mean, everybody's in their house right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They're not in their house because they want to be in their house. They're in the house because they're like, holy crap, we're in a situation where we can't leave the house or we're going to get sick and some people are going to die. And yeah, there's people out there who protest because that's what people do as humans. But the vast majority of people understand that this is what it is. And I think that things will change from here in that way as well. So human behavior changes. If you can evolve, explain to someone, this is the better way to do things. I actually think that it's not as hard as you think. I'm going to stop talking. Madelaine, you can go back to your questions and stuff like that. I'm sorry for the side mission.
I love the optimism, honestly. I think it's great. I obviously don't eat meat and never have. And I ask people these questions all the time because it's so important to me to at least reduce the amount of meat that you eat, because I think people don't realize that one small choice can make such a big impact in the world if everyone did it. Like one less meal of meat a day could really reduce carbon emissions by so much. And so I'm curious as to how you find trying to inspire Gen Zers like yourself, as I'm a millennial, so it's a little different, to eat differently and to think about the world. And do you find that maybe you would know this, maybe you wouldn't, like I wonder if your generation is more open to that because of the world and the climate they've been growing up in?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. What really excites me is this technology. Like, it sounds magical and it sounds like so out of the box, but we've perfected this technology in the labs. And the only thing that we're missing right now is, number one, engineers. Like, there's a lot of scientists working on this. There's not enough people scaling this up. The second thing we're missing is the perception. Like, a lot of people are, like, when you say lab grown meat, like that is just a scary thought. Like when you think about lab, you're like, that sounds like some next, I don't know, bacterial experiment. We're like editing things. No. So I think one of the first things that I think a lot of people my age are excited about these like climate protests. Like there's so many climate protests all over Toronto and like big cities around the world. But then when I come in and I'm like, there's so many solutions that we're just not thinking about. It's not only about raising awareness. It's like about these solutions. Everyone's first reaction is like, that's unnatural. Or like all these like the things that should come up because it's so unusual for us. So I think the first thing that's missing is that people don't fully understand the potential of these types of technologies. And there's so many others. Like right now we can make protein from thin air. Crazy technology I can also talk about, but we have the tools and that blows my mind away. And when I talk to people and I explain to them and like we have a conversation about, you know, the ethics behind these tools and how we can actually do this lab grown stuff, they're always like, how do I get involved? how do I do this? Like, I didn't know about any of these crazy things before. A few weeks ago, I did this like webinar on cellular agriculture to young people across the world. Like, there was people from India, there was people from San Francisco, like everyone. And I remember after that, I got so many emails of people saying, Izzy, like this was so inspiring. Like, I want to be part of this climate movement, but I want it to be more than just like holding signs and walking down the street and hoping that policymakers are going to change. Because I honestly don't think it's going to be the policies that need to change. I think it's the products that need to change. I think it's going to be electric cars. It's not going to be all of us to stop driving. Like, we're not going to hopefully be self-quarantine forever. I think it's going to be these meat products that are going to drive, not the fact that all of us stop eating these products. Right. So when I talk to people and they just like hear this new perspective of science and technology, eyes light up. Everyone's like, how do I do this? So from my experience, like the perception has been super awesome. I think one of the downfalls is that we're first of all not learning about this in school. Like, had I not joined TKS, like I literally would not have ever been exposed to this. Like, it's such a niche area of technology. And I was 15 at the time, now I'm 16. Like, as a teenager, it's like, how do I even get involved with this like crazy microbiology? You need like most people working on this are PhDs, not kids with like high school biology. So I think one of the first things is like, how do we give people the courage to even pursue what they want to pursue? And that's why I wanted to ask you about like when you actually had the courage to just like move to LA when you were 16, how, like, I know your mom was a big part of that, but I think it'd be really awesome to hear about your story and how you even like got to pursue your dream. Because I think everyone has these dreams. Very few people have the support system. Like, TKS was my support system that let me get started. So I'd love to hear about yours, and maybe you have some advice for any Gen Zers or anyone that wants to get started in these crazy fields.
Yeah, I feel like it's all about having a passion and a drive for something. And I'm very, very lucky to have had a support system who believed in me, and everyone around me believed in me. But most importantly, I believed in me. And I think that's kind of where it all starts from, is the ground level. I moved at 18. I finished high school, thank the Lord. I had a regular before that, or else I would have been crazy. And then I just came out and I just believed in myself. And of course, I think the hardest part is a lot of people, like when you try to shift from being a meat eater to a vegan, a lot of people, once they have one piece of bacon, they're like, oh, well, I guess I'm not a vegan anymore. Like, guess I'll be a meat eater again. It's the same kind of thing with like my industry. It's like when you get your first no after an audition, it's like, oh, well, I guess I should move back to my small city and pursue a regular job. I think it's about having passion and drive and tenacity, and also not being hard on yourself. Like, that's the biggest thing even for yourself. I'm sure there are days where you feel like a failure because you didn't make this phone call or you couldn't do this thing. And it's like, we have to just all be so much less hard on ourselves. And that's why I think, talking about the meat industry, it's not about everyone going vegan. You're 100% right about that. It's about people being passionate enough about the environment and what we're leaving for our children's children when we leave, in order to make people inspired to change to alternative proteins. I think it's such a fascinating world, and I just started learning about it like 4 weeks ago. So I think it's so cool that I have you here today. And I think it's all about the way that you provide that information, right? Because when you look about it online, you see a lot of very sciencey, technology-based stuff, and that doesn't sound appealing when you think about what you're eating, right? So I think something like you is so cool because I feel like the way that you talk about it, you have all the science and the technology behind it, but you present it in a way where it's like, this is just like me. And it's just a solution for all of our issues. And if we can get it down to a place where people can actually afford it, because I imagine right now it'll be pretty expensive when it comes on the market. Once we can get to that place and the supply and demand is there, we could actually do some really good things. Very exciting. Yeah. I'm very excited for our future with you and leading.
I love that you mentioned like you had the belief in yourself. And I think like, especially with a lot of young girls, I found like there is confidence issues. Like, we live in this world, like insecurity, comparing, all that stuff. I honestly think like that changing, like whether you're passionate about the environment, I think a lot of people are passionate about the environment because frankly, it's scary. Like, you go on the media and you see all these like political leaders in power. You're like, I don't feel confident in like our leadership right now to bring the world to a good place. I'm just not entirely confident. Yeah, exactly. So I think like environment is a huge passion for a lot of people. I just think one of the things that from my experience, so the program I'm part of, there's 500 kids across cities across North America. Next year we'll be in a whole like 9 cities across North America. And so I have friends from everywhere. And the number one thing that I think holds them back is that they just don't believe in themselves. They don't give themselves the courage, or they don't give themselves the opportunity to even just try things. Like, I had no idea when I got started. I was like, I'm just a kid, super interested in this thing. Let me write an article about it. And then let me write a second one. And then let me learn about Beyond and Impossible and all these things and just start publishing, see what happens. Like, you don't even know. And yeah.
I feel like but even having people like you out there in the world and spreading that message is going to inspire so many other people in your age range to do those kinds of things. And I think that's how you help inspire confidence, especially in young women, is you go out there and you talk about your struggles and your hardships and about how you overcome them and stay passionate. And I think that's what's so great about you is you're out here and you are fighting the good fight. And I also feel like a lot of people are passionate about the environment, but don't even know how to begin kind of putting that passion to the test. It's very hard to navigate those waters as somebody who's kind of beginning in that world.
Yeah.
And I think it's very cool that you're here and you're kind of explaining to people that there are so many different things. And what I think is really interesting is during this quarantine COVID time, the amount of positive things that are happening for the environment.
Yes.
Incredibly fascinating. Like, how do you think we keep the skies blue and there's no smog in LA or no smog in China? How do we continue that moving forward? You spoke about it a little bit with electric cars, obviously, but moving forward, how do we keep our wits about us with what we've learned during quarantine?
Yeah, I had a tweet the other day that I sent. I was like, the environment right now is flourishing. Like, no political movement has ever gone to the state of the environment. Like, and then I think I said something like, I think this is Mother Nature's way of saying that we are the virus. And honestly, like, I think so. Okay, if we talk about electric cars and just electric vehicles, for example, we could say for everyone to stop flying planes as frequently or to stop driving as frequently, but that's not going to solve the root of the problem. The root of the problem is our electricity and our generation of vehicles, et cetera, comes from fossil fuels. It comes from oil. It comes from all these things. Right now, we just don't have batteries that are dense enough. We don't have batteries that can store enough storage. So I have a couple friends from the program I'm part of that are working on that energy storage problem, which is another huge issue. So I think that all these science and technology innovations are going to be like, if we can figure out how to make electric planes and we could turn every plane electric, we don't have to take less flights. Like, we're not going to be able to stop multi-billion-dollar businesses like the media industry or like, international business, et cetera, from happening. So we are going to need planes, but can we make the planes that we have right now more efficient? Can we make cars more efficient? Can we make our food sustainable? So I do think it all starts by thinking about what is causing the carbon emissions right now, and then how can we reimagine that? I don't think there's enough people in the world right now thinking about all these problems and then daring to dream bigger. I think part of that is I think artificial intelligence can be very scary, but at its core, like, it is taking in data and making intelligent decisions. So if we are able to let's say we're able to use AI to generate new forms of batteries, like, we can use these powerful algorithms to do so much more than like customize your Facebook feed or Instagram feed. Like, right now, that's what they're used for, but I do think there's so much more potential for machine learning, et cetera. I think part of it is like, if you don't know the tools that we can use, like all these technologies that I strongly believe have the impact to build new planes, to build new cars, to make factories better, to make food better, you don't know what those are, you can look at all these problems in the world, but you won't know what to do. You'll have to you'll stick to, wanting to make government better or wanting these policymakers or changing people in leadership. But I don't think that the way governments and these systems work, that they just move too slow for these really urgent causes. So I think it does start with training people to even know about these technologies, because you don't have to be a blockchain expert. Blockchain is a decentralized ledger. So it's like it's a technology where, so it's think about it as a decentralized ledger. So anything that I do on the blockchain, everyone can see. So it's a way to distribute things. It's we don't have to go too deep into it. But if you even just know the concept of it, like, most people don't know what the one-liner of blockchain is. So they can't even think about using one application for it could be making health records between hospitals more transparent. So any hospital could have my health records. Like, there's so many applications, but if you don't even know the one-liner, how are you going to even fathom of it? So I think it does start with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think I want to touch on how important it is that I think a lot of people don't realize their impact on the planet. And I think what's really cool about this, like, there's so many bad things, obviously, that's going on in the world. But what I think is so cool and interesting about this is, for the first time, we can actually see with our own eyes the impact that humans make on the planet. And hopefully, this is my very positive, hopefully, people will take that knowledge and they'll maybe think twice about the decisions that they're making. And I think what's even cooler is the message that you're spreading isn't that you want to change people. You don't expect everybody to become a vegan. You don't expect everyone to become super passionate about the environment. But what you want to do is create alternative methods for those things that will reduce carbon emissions and make the environment hopefully a happier and healthier place eventually.
Yeah. Do you have
Yay,
any
I love that. That's great.
Oh, go for it.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that's great. And also, last question.
Yeah.
Upset.
Hit me with it.
This is me giving you the wrap up side.
Awesome. No, I was just gonna. So one thing I wanted to mention within TCAS, if there are any kids around the world, especially in cities like we have a program in Los Angeles, Vancouver, New York, Boston, Toronto, Ottawa, and Las Vegas. So if there are kids around the world that are passionate about even just solving problems, like all you need to know is about, do you want to solve problems and make a big impact in the world? TCAS has financial aid. There's no grades in the applications, and the applications are open right now. So if any kids want to apply and they do want to change the world, I know that was the thing that started my journey and kickstarted. So I don't know if there is, even if there's one kid watching out there, I hope that people do know that it is possible to start wherever they can.
I love that. Oh my goodness. What a great place to wrap up too, because I was just about to ask you, like, how would you encourage people who are interested to help? But this is great information.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say if you are in one of the TCAS cities, our website is tcas.world, WORLD. Check it out. See if that's up your alley. I do think, like, I went into it with no tech experience. I didn't even know, like, I thought it was just gonna be one of those after school programs that are kind of cool, like STEM and that sort of stuff. But it has been so profound and so life-changing for me.
You do it all. You got the plug-in at the end. You did the whole thing. Very impressive. You're the best. I love it.
Thank you.
Amazing. Both of you amazing women. Fantastic. So appreciate it. Yeah, and we'll have more moving forward, and we're excited to hear more from your Knowledge Society friends and do more things with the fantastic Madelaine as well.
Awesome.
Thank
Do
you
we think we can take a coronavirus selfie? I normally ask people to take selfies, but I thought, do you think, okay, cool, I'll do one right here.
We're definitely keeping this on.
Oh, I'll move close.